Weekend Jam, episode 305.
And what are we talking about today?
Okay, so this topic is one that you happen to bring up, but it's one that's been going on for probably decades that I am aware of. It is when your songs are used for politics, whether you intend them to or not.
Yeah.
And where it recently came
Well, let's just say, too, your songs or maybe your interpretation of a song that's out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That your interpretation of a song is taken a certain way.
Oh, I like that. So I'm going to mention a little bit more about that as we go along.
Yeah.
But we know as an artist, your mission is bigger than just caring about whether your songs are interpreted a certain way, but when they get out into the world, people receive them the way they want to.
Yeah.
And often end up using them for their own purposes, and that's kind of the impetus. You may have meant one thing, and for some people, maybe they don't care because...
Yeah, because sometimes maybe it does align. So, I think a prime example, let's give two examples.
Okay.
So let's think, Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow.
Okay.
The Clinton campaign used that in like 92.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Fleetwood Mac song. And as far as I know, Fleetwood Mac did not object to that.
Right.
Had no issues with
Right.
it. Right? However, during the 80s, Ronald Reagan used Born in the USA.
Yes.
And which, Bruce Springsteen kind of bristled about that because the way that Ronald Reagan used it was like, patriotic type thing. And Bruce Springsteen, and I'm not going to say that he meant it in a way that wasn't patriotic.
Right.
As much as he meant it in a way of really kind of checking America.
Right, I was about to say calling you
for
out.
Falling short.
Or for the veterans, right.
Right, and that kind of thing. It's like, for the very people that I think Bruce Springsteen felt like Reagan was not looking out for, that's kind of who he wrote it for. So it was meant to be a message to you to get your shit together.
Right, and instead, you used it
as a rallying cry. So I mean, I think that, but I wouldn't say that it was anti-patriotic. Because to me that's a misnomer. Yeah. That if you feel like your country, you can feel like your country's great, but your country's falling short of its greatness. Yeah. And so you're like, hey, I'm checking you to get you to live up to your greatness. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. As it's like you can love your family member or whoever else, but
check them. Yeah.
Right, and
in fact,
you need to check them.
I was about to say that probably means you care
more about them because you want to see them go to their potential. Yeah. So so just because you're critical doesn't mean that.
Yeah. So again, you may not care because you don't mind that political view. Right. But again, it can be taken out of context. And then we were talking about that it may not, depending on the political climate, things may be taken differently from one generation or one decade to another. And we were talking about that whole small town thing.
The small town thing. It's sort of like the Jason Aldean does this song. That you can't don't try this in a small town or whatever else. And and it was taken to be almost like a racial type thing. Right. I mean, I think some of it may have been spurred on by some of the imagery that he had
in front of the courthouse or whatever,
and all the rest of that kind of thing.
Racial background.
So it may have been that part of it, but it's also, I think, a byproduct of the climate in which we find ourselves in today. Yes. Because I think about the Dukes of Hazzard. When the Dukes of Hazzard aired in the 70s and they had the card of General Lee with the Confederate flag on it. Yeah. No one that I knew of thought of that as a racist show. Right. But I think if it aired today, people would feel that way, right? Yeah.
And then the small town.
Yeah, the small town thing is like when John Mellencamp had his small town, it didn't have that same impact. I mean, as much as it was more or less a small town America type of way of thinking about things, right?
It was we as a small town we do things this way, but it wasn't a racial.
It was not.
It could have been black small towns or a mixed small town or white small town.
Yeah, it was almost like a forgotten America type of thing, as the way that he was using it, and
the way it seemed like it was received. It was nobody took umbrage to it. So,
nobody seemed like they took it the same way, because of how the political climate is now. And then, at that time, Farm Aid and things like that was happening. So, the plight of the American farmer was front and center.
Yeah.
Or at least artists were doing things to push it front and center.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so, it was probably just taken within that context.
Right.
And not in the context in which it's taken, which kind of takes me to that song from that guy that just recently went viral, that Rich Man.
From Richmond.
Richmond or something like that. If that same song was released in the 80s, I think people would have seen that song similar to Small Town.
Okay.
I think that's the context in which it was taken.
Yeah.
The irony is that it's sort of like taken to say, hey, for people who are on the right to say, this goes to show that we need a rich man from New York in office as opposed to a rich man from Richmond. So it's one of these types of things where it's weird the context in which it's taken, in which, the guy who did the song has received some blowback from the right because he was kind of like, well, it's kind of apolitical in nature as much as what I'm saying is that, hey, we're getting a raw deal here.
Yeah.
And that, politicians on both sides of the aisle have contributed to us getting a raw deal, right?
Sorry, yes.
Right. And, and I think that might have been the context, had it come out in the 80s or even the 90s.
Any other time, Lord have mercy.
Right,
This is, our political climate is so split down the middle that is really pitiful. But one last point is that once a political side co-opts you, then you can actually move from one side of the aisle to the other. So your example was J.K. Rowling.
Yeah. Well, definitely, and not necessarily for songs and things like that, but it was because of certain positions.
Yeah.
So meaning that at one time you could be a person who may be left on one position and right on another position. Whereas now it appears that if you aren't completely left on one position or completely right on another position, then you're almost thought to be a traitor.
It's right. On both sides.
Yeah, right. So that's kind of what happened with J.K. Rowling, where, she took the correct position when it came to supporting gay couples.
Right. She made Dumbledore.
Right.
Gay.
Yeah, but she took the wrong position when it came to the trans
women.
movement.
Right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so therefore, like now she's kind of on the outs.
Right.
Because of that, right? But I think as an artist, you have to be true to yourself because I think Carlos Santana made some what could be construed as transphobic comments at a concert that he had. Now, people aren't really talking about it.
Yeah, is this new?
Yeah, but this he did do this, right?
Okay.
And so, and it's same thing like, Eric Clapton has been known to make like some racial, some racist statements, right? Before in the past, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but as an artist,
right?
You do have to figure out how to be true to yourself. And
be honest. No, I'm just saying, whoever is listening, watching, nobody lines up completely with another person. I'm saying that even as a couple, even as partners, even as best friends, even as all that, we have certain views that don't overlap.
Right.
And that's okay. So when people start saying, yo, you're all on this side, that's stupid. I'm sorry. It just is.
Right.
And I guess I remember the whole, what was the political couple from the 90s? What was one was the left and one was right? Who's that?
I know you're talking about. What's his name? He was
Carville?
Carville. James Carville and his wife.
Right.
Carville was Democrat, and actually he was I think a consultant with the Clintons, and then his wife was a Madeline or something like that. I forgot her name. But she was on the Republican
side. And they were
side.
famously on opposite sides, and it was okay.
But used to have more programming like that.
Yeah.
Used to have this point counterpoint type of programming where you would just, you would hear these two sides, kind of discussing issues, and I think we've kind of broken away from that. And
where you can actually change minds by actually discussing all the different objections and all the different benefits to let people make up their own minds, and to be where they actually fall and not just say, well, what does the group say? If the group says that I'm scooching over here, I'm going to line up exactly. Like, that's stupid.
And we've made it easier on our politicians because of that.
And made artists uninteresting. I'm sorry, if an artist is going to line up directly with the left or the right and have no nuance, then what is the point? Again, part of to me, the philosophical underpinning of art is to kind of ruffle some feathers, is to make statements that make you ask questions.
Or it's just also realizing that artists are human. That it's like the more things that I read about certain artists, whether it's Jimi Hendrix or
Miles Davis,
they're just there are very questionable things that these people did, sometimes to women, whatever it may have
James,
been, right? It's like, because when people start thinking about, like, okay, we're kind of off the subject probably, I know, but when you start thinking about canceling people because of their behavior or political views or whatever it might be,
there'll be nobody left.
There'll be no one on the radio, or you won't stream anything.
Right.
You will be streaming the silent album.
We just learned about that. I had no idea that there was somebody, I can't remember who the band was, that released a silent album and made $20,000 before Spotify finally took the thing down.
Right. But you will end up being at that point, or just listen to people who are completely uninterested.
Right.
Because people are going to have character flaws.
Right.
They're going to have things that they've done that you don't agree with. Yeah. And that's the same thing. You cannot sit up and feel like, okay, I'm going to agree with every single thing that an artist does. Right. Now, I mean, sometimes is there a bridge too far? Yeah, I understand that. I mean, we're not saying that, okay, it's just everything. Right. But I'm just saying that to some extent, artists are going to be artists. And I do believe that there is a certain amount of the song, having a separate life from the artist.
Yeah, that's true too.
So, I mean, like, you may hate R. Kelly.
Right.
But the theme and what was said in I Believe I Can Fly.
Right. It's still encouraging. Right.
So,
I mean, uplifting, regardless of what craziness ensued with him.
Right. I mean, I think that was the same thing for me. It's like, for the longest, I liked Leonard Skinner, Sweet Home Alabama, Free Bird, bunch of stuff by them. But they would fly the Confederate flag at their concerts. Yeah. So, I always felt like, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable going to their concerts.
Yeah.
But the music was good.
Yeah.
And so I still like me some Sweet Home Alabama, even though I disagree with the flying of the Confederate flag. I have those types of things, I mean, but I don't know how I feel about, when Lady Antebellum, changes their name to Lady A.
Like, what?
Or, the Dixie Chicks become the Chicks, because they had Dixie in it.
Dixie doesn't have to, I don't know.
It doesn't necessarily have to have, it's
it doesn't
not.
have to be the racial part of it.
Right. It's not like they were the Nazi Chicks.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like they were that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Dixie. There's such thing as Dixie cups.
Right.
Certain things kind of outgrow.
Right.
Whatever, negative connotations that were
culture that they were emerged from.
Right. That sometimes you do kind of get past it. It's the same thing I think it's like with Aunt Your Mama, right?
Yeah.
At least for me. I know other people might be like, oh man, when I looked at that, it was like, it was devastating for me. But, it's sort of like, I understand where it came from.
Yeah.
But to me, the cultural pain that's associated with it is gone.
Yeah.
So I don't, Uncle Ben, those types of things, those type of things do absolutely nothing for me. And so I don't necessarily feel like those are the things that that I'm concerned about. I mean, to me, those things are different from, like, if you're, a southern state and you're flying the Confederate flag with the United States flag, over your state capital.
Right.
To me, that sends a completely different message because you are a state institution, and to me, that's deeper than some rock band flying the Confederate flag, as opposed to some state institution, it's a courthouse or whatever else, and I'm expecting to get justice, and I'm seeing a Confederate flag. That's a whole different thing. Yeah. You know, that, and I think sometimes people have a problem with kind of separating it.
Right, yeah, yeah.
You know, so there's two different expectations. You know, I listen to Leonard Skinner, you know, to get enjoyment from music. I'm not going to a Leonard Skinner concert looking for justice. Whereas I would be going to a courthouse looking for justice, unbiased justice. Yeah. That's a whole different thing.
Which, if you flat it out front, then you're saying, I got some views.
And my taxpayer dollars are actually paying for that. You know what I mean? Too. So that's the difference. You know, it's a huge difference between the two. So.
All right. So again, as an artist, we know that your intention may not be for your song to be used positively or negatively for any of that. Because some people don't want to be associated with anything. I mean, that's the way it kind of was with Prince. He didn't want people doing his stuff, you know, early on. So, you know, so maybe you don't. But if it happens, how do you feel about it?
Well, I think about that too. It's like, I think some of the songs that we have done could be used for religious purposes. You know what I mean?
Oh, you're talking about,
you know what I mean? That some people can see it that way. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So that's a possibility. You know, that the way that they might
like
look
you said,
at the
I'm
messages.
not sure. It depends on what religious sect or group it is that, like you said, we might be looking some kind of way about it.
Right. So you never know. I mean, you know what I mean?
That's true.
How would you feel about that with your song?
We definitely want to hear about this one because I know this one is again, it is a good, I guess, possibility, a good reality, a good problem to have, because that means that somebody's loving what you're doing and they want to use it, you know, because they love it.
Right.
But again, it may bring some issues for you as the artist.
You as an artist, or even like if you're consuming music, you know, because we as artists, we also consume music. You know, where's a bridge too far for you with respect to an artist's views, whether they express them in their music or they express them someplace else. You know, I think about that with some girls with the Rolling Stones, and, you know, some of the things that they said on that record, and, you know, we had that record. My brother bought it, and so, you know, I had the record before it was censored. So yeah, I mean, you know, it didn't stop my enjoyment of the record. Again, I mean, I think I just had that in my head even early on, that this is artistic expression, and I don't always have to agree with it. You know what I mean? That you know, that certain artists can do or say things that I don't agree with. You know, like Sly Stone using drugs. I love Sly Stone. I did not agree with the drug use. You know what I mean? That part I did not
like you said, even with rappers. I mean, we weirdly like Straight Outta Compton, but most of the ideas and the concepts acting into reality, we wouldn't agree with it. You know, so, but it was fun. It was like theater for me. I felt like it was like
it was insight into something that I could not write. It was an experience I did not have. You know, completely. And,
but
you know,
as far as agreeing with now going out and engaging in behavior like the stuff they were talking about,
all different things, or just politically saying I agree with the way that they kind of frame things. Not necessarily. So.
All right, so we'd love to hear from you on that. Make sure you leave it below. We're so close to 50,000 subscribers.
We really
if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. And what do you think we should do to celebrate?
50K.
50K subscribers, because maybe we'll take your suggestion. Leave it in the comments below. And what else?
And then we'll also have another live stream that will be happening,
October 20th.
So
for our latest single from Obtanium Flow. The song is called So Restless. 7 p.m. It's Eastern time. Please come join us. We have stickers, we have t-shirts, links are below. And if you want to see more about the topics that we talked about today, check the blog post. All right? If you dig the vibe and you want to be a part of the tribe, be sure to
subscribe.
Wishing you love, peace, and chicken grease.